I want you to picture the scene before we even get into the text today.
Mm-hmm.
The air is just filled with dust, literal dust, because we are in the temple courts in Jerusalem, and there's construction going on everywhere.
Yeah, Herod's big renovation project. It was a decades-long thing.
Exactly. But there's also this incredible, almost suffocating tension. It's the aftermath of the Feast of Tabernacles.
So the city is packed, absolutely overflowing with pilgrims.
And you have this itinerant rabbi, Jesus, standing in the middle of the most sacred space in the entire Jewish world.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not backing down.
It really is a powder keg. If you look at the timeline we're working with, this isn't, a gentle sermon on a hillside. This is a confrontation.
A direct one.
A direct one. We are witnessing a moment where theological debate stops being polite, it stops being academic, and it starts escalating into what is, well, effectively a riot.
A riot that ends with an attempted execution. I mean, people are literally picking up stones to crush a man's skull. That is where we are heading today.
It's intense stuff.
It is. So we are taking a deep dive into a harmonized chronological analysis of John chapter 8. We're starting at verse 37, and we're going all the way through the end of chapter 9. It's a massive chunk of text.
It is, and it covers three very distinct movements, you could say. First, we have the children of the devil accusation, which is, it's probably the harshest thing Jesus ever said to anyone.
It's brutal.
Then you have the I am declaration.
A big one.
This is the theological peak of John's gospel, arguably. And then right after that, this incredible story of the man born blind.
And for you, the listener who's joining us, we aren't just doing a verse-by-verse commentary here. We have this stack of sources in front of us. I'm looking at merged gospel narratives, some pretty dense theological commentaries, historical notes. But our mission really is to look at all of this through a specific framework. We're calling it the four-lens perspective.
And this is critical because, usually when we read a story in the Bible, we just read the plot. We follow the events. But the four gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they each emphasize a different facet of who Jesus is. It's like looking at a diamond from four different angles.
Yeah, I was reading through the prep notes on this, and I love how distinct they are. So correct me if I'm wrong here, but Matthew is the one who presents Jesus primarily as the king.
That's right, the royal authority, the judge, the one who lays down the law of the kingdom.
So when we see Jesus in these texts, if he's defining citizenship or making these authoritative judgments, that's the Matthew lens.
Exactly.
Then we have Mark, who shows us the servant,
the
guy who is constantly moving, working, suffering, getting his hands dirty. He's a man of action.
Mark is the action movie director of the Gospels. It's always immediately then and then. Very fast-paced.
I like that. Okay, then Luke gives us the ultimate man.
The perfect human. He's compassionate. He's rational. He's socially aware. He's interested in the outcasts.
And John.
Yeah.
Well, John's the one taking us into the stratosphere, isn't he?
He really is. John sees Jesus as God, the divine, the eternal word, the light of the world.
So our job today is to see how those four portraits, those four lenses, all converge in this one incredible narrative arc.
It's a fascinating study.
Okay, let's get into it. Part 1, the War of Lineage. We are dropping into John chapter 8, around verse 37. Jesus is in a heated debate with the Jewish leaders. And looking at the transcript of this conversation, it feels like they are just talking past each other.
Completely.
The leaders keep hammering this one point. We are Abraham's seed. We're fine. We're okay.
And to understand why they are so stubborn, so fixated on this point, you have to understand the first century Jewish mindset regarding something called the merit of the fathers.
Okay, unpack that for us.
This wasn't just, national pride like saying I'm an American or I'm French. They believed theologically that because Abraham was so righteous, his spiritual bank account of righteousness, it sort of covered his descendants.
Like an inheritance.
Spiritual inheritance, yeah. It was their safety net, their trump card. No matter what they did, at the end of the day, they were Abraham's kids, so they had a special status with God.
So they're thinking, I have the right DNA, so I'm in the VIP section.
That's a perfect way to put it.
But Jesus comes in with a scalpel in verse 37. He says, I know that you are Abraham's seed, but you seek to kill me because my word has no place in you. Looking at the Greek notes here, he distinguishes between seed and children. That seems really intentional.
Oh, it is incredibly intentional. The word for seed is sperma. It's biological. It's genetic.
Literally DNA.
Literally DNA. Jesus admits, yes, physically, on a 23andMe test, you are descendants of Abraham. I grant you that. But the word for children is techna, and that implies character. That implies you share the nature of your father.
So it's the difference between having someone's last name and having their heart.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Jesus uses this very simple logic-based argument here. He says in verse 39, if you were Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham.
Okay, so what works is he referring to?
Well, think back to Genesis. Specifically, I think Jesus has Genesis 18 in mind. This is the scene where three strangers, who were actually messengers from God, maybe even a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ, they show up at Abraham's tent.
Right, in the heat of the day.
In the heat of the day. And what does Abraham do?
He doesn't wait. He runs to them. He bows down. He gets Sarah to bake bread. He kills the fatted calf. I mean, he is the ultimate host. He goes all out.
He welcomes the messengers of God with open arms, with honor, with humility. Now contrast that with this scene. Here stands Jesus, the ultimate messenger, the Word made flesh, and what are these so-called children of Abraham doing?
They are baking bread.
They are plotting murder. They're looking for ways to kill him. So Jesus is saying, your actions betray your claim. You don't look anything like your supposed father.
So the Matthew lens here, the king perspective, is basically Jesus redefining citizenship in his kingdom. He's saying, I don't care about your passport. I don't care about your ancestry. In my kingdom, citizenship is defined by obedience, by your actions.
And he's judging them as king would judge treason. You claim allegiance to my ancestor, Abraham, but your hearts are plotting rebellion against me. It's a judgment on their treasonous hearts.
And that strikes a nerve, a very deep nerve. Because in verse 41, the leaders snap back. And this is where the conversation turns. Well, it turns nasty.
It gets personal.
Very personal. They say, we were not born of fornication. We have one Father God. I highlighted this in the notes because the commentary suggests this isn't just a defensive statement. This is a slur. A directed, calculated insult at Jesus.
It's a very thinly veiled attack. You have to remember the rumors that dogged Jesus his entire life. He was born of Mary before she and Joseph were officially married.
Right, the scandal of his birth.
In a small, gossip-filled village like Nazareth, and even in Jerusalem, the whisper network would have been vicious. They are implying that he is illegitimate.
We know who our fathers are. Are you sure about yours?
That is precisely the subtext. They are attacking his legitimacy to bolster their own. And notice the psychological projection here. We call it cognitive dissonance today.
How so?
They're claiming God is our father, while simultaneously planning to murder the Son of God. They're trying to claim the moral high ground while standing in the absolute gutter of hatred and murder plots. It's a staggering contradiction.
And Jesus? He doesn't take the bait, does he? He doesn't get sidetracked defending his mother or his own birth.
Not at all. He just bypasses the personal insult and goes straight for the spiritual jugular.
He goes on the offensive.
Yeah.
Verse 44, this is the diagnosis. You are of your father the devil, and the desires of your father you want to do.
I mean, just pause there. Can you imagine hearing that? From anyone, let alone a rabbi in the temple.
It's the most inflammatory thing you could possibly say.
And this is the John perspective in high definition. Jesus as God, pulling back the curtain of reality. He isn't just calling them a bad name, like a schoolyard insult. He is diagnosing their spiritual origin. He sees the spirit operating behind the human face.
And he identifies two key characteristics of the devil here: a murderer from the beginning and a liar.
Violence and falsehood. Those are the two family traits. And Jesus says that when the devil lies, he speaks his native language.
His mother tongue.
It's his default setting. It's what he does naturally. And Jesus is pointing out a simple, observable pattern. You want to kill me, that's violence. You are lying about who I am and who you are, that's falsehood. Therefore, you share the family traits of the devil. You are his children.
Wow. That is heavy. And it connects all the way back to the beginning, doesn't it? Genesis 3.15, the prophecy about the two seeds.
The seed of the woman versus the seed of the serpent, yes. This is the Mark lens coming into play here. Jesus as the servant engaged in active spiritual warfare. This isn't a classroom debate anymore. This is the ancient war manifesting in the temple courts.
So what we're seeing is the serpent seed trying to crush the heel of the woman's seed right there in real time.
Exactly. And you can even look at 1 John 3, where John, years later, reflects on this. He says you can distinguish the children of God from the children of the devil very simply. The ones who practice righteousness and love their brother are from God. The ones who don't are from the devil, like Cain, who murdered his brother.
Because he was of the wicked one.
It's the same spiritual DNA. Murder and lies.
And the test Jesus gives in verse 47 is so simple, but it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
He who is of God hears God's words. It's almost like the spiritual paternity test.
That's a great way to describe it. If God is your father, you understand his language. If I speak French to my children, they understand me because they grew up in my house hearing it every day. Jesus is speaking God language, truth, love, humility, life. And these leaders are just looking at him blankly.
It's ecstatic to them.
It's static. They can't process it. Why? Because, as Jesus says, they belong to a different household. They speak a different native language.
And that leads us directly into part 2, the great I am. Because now the gloves are completely off. There's no more pretense of polite debate.
No, the masks are off.
The leaders are furious. In verse 48, they just shout, "Do we not say rightly that you are a Samaritan and have a demon?"
They are throwing the kitchen sink at him now. These are the 2 worst insults you could level at a Jewish man in the 1st century.
Let's break them down. Samaritan.
Yeah.
What exactly does that imply?
It's a racial and a religious slur all in one. It means he's a heretic, a half-breed, racially and theologically impure. The Samaritans had their own version of the Torah, their own temple on Mount Gerizim. To call a Jew a Samaritan was to say, you are an enemy of our people and our God.
So it's an accusation of total betrayal.
Total betrayal, and then having a demon.
Yeah, what's the strategy there?
Well, that's an attempt to delegitimize his power. See, they can't deny that he does miracles. They can't deny his supernatural authority. So if they can't deny the power, they have to demonize the source.
Okay, he has power, but he's doing it by black magic. It's from Beelzebul.
Exactly. It's their only way to explain away the evidence without having to submit to it.
What stands out to me here, though, is looking at this through the Luke lens. Jesus as the ultimate man. It's his reaction, or really his lack of reaction.
That's incredible.
If someone called me a heretic and demon-possessed in front of a huge crowd, I would lose it. I'd be defensive, angry.
Yeah.
But he just says so calmly, I do not have a demon, but I honor my Father, and you dishonor me.
It is perfect emotional regulation. It is rational calm in the face of absolute hysteria and hatred. He models how a perfect human being should respond to persecution, not with retaliation, not with insults, but with simple, clear truth.
He doesn't get dragged down into the mud with them.
Never. He maintains his dignity and his focus.
But then he drops a promise that just confuses them even more. Verse 51, truly, truly, I say to you, if anyone keeps my word, he will never see death. And the leaders, who are clearly very literal, concrete thinkers, they just go, wait a minute, Abraham died, the prophets died, they were great men of God, and they're dead. Who do you think you are?
They are completely stuck in a materialistic, physical worldview. To them, death means your heart stops beating and you get buried. That's it.
And Jesus is talking about something else entirely.
He's talking about eternal death, the second death, spiritual separation from God. But this whole exchange is the setup for the climax. They mock him, they ridicule him. Are you greater than our father Abraham, who is dead? And then they say, you are not yet 50 years old and you have seen Abraham.
They think he's either insane or unbelievably arrogant.
Both, probably.
And Jesus responds with this curious statement in verse 56. Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. I want to pause here. When did Abraham see Jesus' day? Is this a specific event in the Old Testament?
Most theologians and the sources we have here point directly to Genesis 22, the binding of Isaac.
The sacrifice on Mount Moriah.
Exactly. Abraham's about to sacrifice his son of promise. He lifts the knife, and at the last possible second, God stops him and provides a ram caught in the thicket.
Jehovah Jireh, the Lord will provide.
Abraham saw, in that moment, the principle of substitutionary atonement. He saw that God himself would provide a sacrifice to save the son.
So he saw the gospel in type and shadow.
He saw it. He looked forward through the corridor of time and saw the day of the Messiah when God would provide his own son as the ultimate sacrifice. And Jesus says he saw it and he was glad.
So Abraham is looking forward with faith. But the Pharisees, they're just looking at the calendar. They say, you're a young man. This is chronologically impossible.
And that's the setup. They've walked right into his trap.
And then, verse 58. The moment that changes everything in the Gospel of John. Truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am.
We have to stop and really look at the grammar here because in English it's incredibly powerful, but in the Greek it's absolutely explosive.
I've got the Greek notes right here. For Abraham, the verb is ginomai.
Right, ginomai, which means to come into being, to be born, to be created. Before Abraham came into existence,
He was a created being.
he had a starting point. But for himself, Jesus uses ego eimi, I am. No beginning, no becoming. Just continuous, uncreated, eternal existence. But it's so much more than just a claim to be old or to pre-exist Abraham.
This is the divine name.
This is the divine name from Exodus 3.14, the burning bush.
Moses asks God, "Who shall I say sent me?"
And God says, tell them I am WHO, I am sent you. Jesus is taking the personal covenant name of Yahweh, the name so holy they wouldn't even pronounce it, and he is applying it directly to himself. He's claiming to be the uncreated God of the Old Testament.
And their reaction confirms that they understood him perfectly.
Absolutely, there was no ambiguity.
Verse 59. Then they took up stones to throw at him.
They didn't think he was crazy. They didn't think he was misspeaking. They thought he was a blasphemer. Leviticus 24 is crystal clear. The penalty for blasphemy is stoning. And they were ready to carry out the sentence right then and there in the temple.
Which begs the logistical question, where did they get the stones? It's not like they're just piles of rocks lying around the temple, is there?
Well, normally no. But remember the context we set up at the beginning.
The construction.
The temple was under that massive renovation project started by Herod the Great. It went on for decades. There would have been piles of rubble, construction debris, unfinished masonry, loose stones lying all around the outer courts.
So they just grabbed these jagged rocks ready to kill him. And the text says, Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple, going through the midst of them, and so passed by.
It's such a strange and supernatural exit. You have the servant perspective from Mark. He's preserving his life because his hour, the cross, had not yet come. But you also have the king perspective from Matthew. He just walks through this angry, murderous mob with a kind of supernatural authority. They can't touch him. He just leaves.
And this transition is what blows my mind. We move from the end of John 8 to the beginning of John 9. We go from a near-death experience, a full-blown riot, stones in the air,
Utter chaos,
to a quiet street where a beggar is sitting.
The contrast is so jarring, isn't it? I mean, most of us, if we just escaped a lynching, we'd be hiding in a basement somewhere, heart-pounding for the rest of the day.
Or the rest of the week.
Right. But Jesus just walks out of the chaos, turns a corner, and immediately gets back to work. He stops. And he stops for a nobody.
Part 3. The man born blind. And it starts with the disciples asking a question that, honestly, it makes me cringe a little bit every time I read it.
Mm-hmm.
They see the blind man and they ask Jesus, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?"
It sounds so callous to our modern ears, but this was the standard default theology of the day. We call it retribution theology, or sometimes a form of karma.
The basic idea being?
The basic idea was God is just.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, if you are suffering in some profound way, like with a lifelong disability, you must have done something specific to deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a simple cause and effect equation. Bad thing happens, must be a bad person.
But the man was born blind. So how could he have sinned to cause it?
Believe it or not, the rabbis actually debated this. Some speculated that a fetus could sin in the womb.
Seriously?
Oh, yes. Others believed in a kind of transgenerational guilt, that the parent's secret sin was being directly punished in the physical body of their child.
That is such a heavy burden for a family to carry. Not only do you have a disabled child, which is hard enough in the ancient world with no social safety net, but the entire community looks at you and whispers, "What did you do wrong?"
It's the weaponization of shame. It adds a spiritual and social burden on top of the physical one. And Jesus just shatters this entire worldview with his answer.
He does. In verse 3, he says, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God might be revealed in him."
This is a new theodicy, a whole new way of understanding God and suffering. It's a paradigm shift.
He completely disconnects suffering from specific personal sin in this case.
He does. He says, essentially, you're asking the wrong question. You're looking for someone to blame. I'm looking for an opportunity for glory. This tragedy isn't a punishment, it's a platform. It's a stage that has been set for God to show his power and compassion.
And then he says in verse 4, "I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work."
That's the Mark perspective, isn't it? The servant is on a deadline, he has a mission from the Father, and he is relentlessly focused on completing it. The night he's referring to is his coming arrest and crucifixion. Time is run out.
So he gets to work. And the method he uses, it's very earthy, it's very physical. Verse 6, "He spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay."
If you look at this through the Mark lens, the servant, this is Jesus literally getting his hands dirty. He doesn't just wave a magic wand or say a word from a distance. He engages. He touches the man. He mixes his own DNA, his saliva, with the dust of the earth.
Is there a deeper connection there to Genesis, maybe? I mean, God forming man from the dust.
Absolutely. The typology is unmistakable. In Genesis 2, God forms Adam from the dust of the ground and breathes life into him. Here, Jesus, the Son of God, is acting as the creator. He is forming new eyes, or repairing the broken ones, using the original raw materials of creation. It's a powerful act of recreation.
A do-over for this man's sight.
Precisely.
And then he tells the man, go, wash in the pool of Siloam. And John, the author, adds this little helpful parenthesis for us, which is translated sent.
And that's not a throwaway detail. John never includes throwaway details. Jesus is the Shaliach, the sent one from the Father. So the man must listen to the sent one and go to the sent pool.
It's all about obedience.
It is. The miracle required the man's participation. He had to get up and stumble his way through the busy streets of Jerusalem with mud on his face.
Imagine that walk. He's blind. He's covered in the spit and mud paste. People are probably mocking him, pointing at him. Look at the crazy beggar.
He had to endure the shame and the difficulty trusting in the word of this stranger. But he does it. He finds the pool. He washes. And the text says simply, he came back seeing.
And this single event triggers what I think is the most underrated part of the Gospel of John. Part 4, the investigation.
Yes. The entire rest of the chapter turns into a gripping courtroom drama.
It really does. It's like an episode of Law and Order, Jerusalem. And it starts with the neighbors. These are the people who have seen him sitting in the same spot, begging, for years. And they are completely confused.
It's almost a comedy of errors. They're looking at this man standing and walking, and they can't process it. Some say, isn't this the guy who used to sit and beg? Others say, no, he just looks like him.
They are experiencing a profound cognitive dissonance. They can't reconcile the image of the helpless, blind beggar with this man who is standing there, confident and seeing.
And the man is just standing in the middle of it all, saying, I am he. It's me, guys. It's really me.
But they can't handle it. So because they don't know what to do with a miracle, what do? They take him to the authorities. They bring him to the Pharisees.
Which is the worst possible thing they could have done for their own peace of mind.
And here is where the Matthew lends Jesus as king and lawgiver clashes directly with the religious lawyers. Because the Pharisees, they don't care that a man born blind can now see.
No, their first question is not, how is this wonderful? It's, how did this happen? They are looking for a rule violation.
And they find one. The healing happened on the Sabbath.
Specifically, the problem was the method. The oral traditions of the scribes had created 39 specific categories of work that were prohibited on the Sabbath, and one of them was kneading.
Making dough.
Right. And by making clay from dirt and spittle, Jesus had technically kneaded. He broke the letter of their law.
So they're arguing over technicalities while a man is looking at the sunset for the very first time in his life. The absurdity is just staggering.
It's legalism blinding them to grace. It's a perfect illustration of their spiritual condition. And they immediately draw their conclusion. This man is not from God because he does not keep the Sabbath.
But there's a split, isn't there? Not all of them agree.
No, there's a division. Some of them, the more rational ones perhaps, they ask the obvious question. How can a man who is a sinner do such signs? The evidence of the miracle is clashing with their interpretation of the law.
So they're stuck. And they decide to call witnesses. They bring in the parents. And this scene just breaks my heart every time.
It is tragic. The parents are hauled in. You can feel their fear coming off the page. The Pharisees ask them 3 simple questions. Is this your son? Was he born blind? How does he now see?
3 yes or no questions, basically. And look at their answers, so carefully worded. We know that this is our son and that he was born blind.
They confirm the basic facts.
But by what means he now sees we do not know, or who opened his eyes we do not know. He is of age, ask him. He will speak for himself.
They throw their own son under the bus.
Completely. Why wouldn't they celebrate? My son can see. This man Jesus is a prophet from God. This is amazing.
Because of fear. John tells us explicitly in verse 22, they feared the Jews, for the Jews had agreed already that if anyone confessed that he was Christ, he would be put out of the synagogue.
We need to unpack that phrase, put out of the synagogue. To a modern listener, that sounds like, okay, you have to find another church. You're no longer a member.
No, it was so much more than that. The term was aposunagogos. It meant total excommunication, social death.
Explain what that would entail.
The synagogue wasn't just a place of worship on Saturdays. It was the center of everything. It was the community center, the courthouse, the economic marketplace, the social hub. If you were excommunicated, your customers wouldn't buy from you. Your neighbors wouldn't speak to you. You couldn't be a witness in court. You were a pariah, an outcast.
So the parents were protecting their social standing and their economic status at the expense of their son's testimony.
And at the expense of the truth. Fear made them cowards.
So the beggar is left standing alone, no support system. His parents have abandoned him to the wolves. And the Pharisees turn back to him in verse 24. They try to bully him into submission. They say, "Give God the glory. We know that this man is a sinner."
And that phrase, give God the glory, it isn't a pious suggestion. It's actually a formal oath formula. It's like saying, swear on the Bible to tell the truth. They're demanding that he agree with their theological conclusion, that Jesus is a sinner.
And this is where the beggar becomes my favorite character in the entire Bible.
He's amazing.
He doesn't flinch. He doesn't back down. He says, whether he is a sinner or not, I do not know. One thing I know, that though I was blind, now I see.
It is the ultimate empirical argument. It's the power of personal testimony. You can have your theology. I have my experience. You have your theories. I have my sight. You cannot argue with a transformed life.
But he doesn't stop there. He gets bolder. The Pharisees keep pressing him, asking, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? And the beggar gets sarcastic. He gets sassy with them.
He does. He says, I told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples?
I can just hear the dripping sarcasm in his voice. He is openly mocking the most powerful, most educated religious men in his entire world.
It's irony at its absolute finest. The uneducated beggar is now lecturing the PhDs in theology on how God works. And in verse 31, he lays it out for them. He says, now we know that God does not hear sinners. But if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, he hears him.
He's using their own theology against them.
He dismantles their entire argument with basic Sunday school level Jewish theology. Since the world began, it has been unheard of that anyone opened the eyes of one who was born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. His logic is flawless.
And how do they handle being schooled by a street beggar?
They lose their composure completely. There's no more theological debate. They resort to pure ad hominem attacks. You were completely born in sins, and are you teaching us?
They use his former disability as a weapon against him.
Exactly. They go right back to the flawed theology from the beginning of the chapter, and then it says they cast him out.
They excommunicate him, the very thing his parents were afraid of.
They do it. They fulfill his parents' worst fear. He's now officially cut off from his people, from his community, from his religion. And from a Markan perspective, this is the cost of discipleship. Standing for the truth cost him everything he had.
But this leads to the most beautiful moment in the whole story. Part 5, spiritual sight. Verse 35 says, Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and when he had found him.
Just stop there for a second. When he had found him. That is the Luke perspective shining through, the ultimate man, the good shepherd, seeking out the one lost sheep. The religious establishment threw him out like garbage. Jesus went looking for him.
When religion casts you out, Jesus takes you in.
That's the message.
And he asks him this direct question, do you believe in the Son of God? And the man, who still doesn't know who he's talking to, says, who is he, Lord, that I may believe in him?
He's so open. He's so ready.
And Jesus says, you have both seen him, and it is he who is talking with you.
And the man's response is immediate. Lord, I believe. And he worshipped him.
And here's the Matthew lens one more time. Jesus the King accepts the worship.
Yes. A prophet would say, stand up, I'm just a man. An angel would say, don't worship me, worship God. Jesus accepts the worship because he is the King. He is God in the flesh.
And then Jesus gives the final verdict. It's a paradox. And it summarizes the entire 9 chapters of John so far. For judgment I have come into this world, that those who do not see may see, and that those who see may become blind.
It's the great reversal. It's the summary of this whole episode. The beggar knew he was blind physically, and he was humble enough to know he was spiritually in need, so he was open to receiving sight.
But the Pharisees were convinced they could see. They thought they had all the answers, all the theology, all the righteousness.
And because they were so sure they saw, they were actually blind, utterly blind to the light of the world standing right in front of them.
So when they overhear this and ask, are we blind also? What is Jesus' final word to them?
He tells them, if you were blind, you would have no sin. In other words, if you could just admit your need, if you could admit you don't have all the answers, you could be healed. There would be no guilt. But now you say, we see, therefore your sin remains.
It is the sin of pride. The sin of self-righteousness.
It is the one thing that blinds you to the work of God.
So we've walked through this incredible, dense narrative. We've seen the war of lineage, the great I Am declaration, and the courtroom drama of the man born blind. Let's talk about the modern application, because this isn't just ancient history. This is psychology, this is sociology, this is for us today.
It absolutely is. I think the first thing that just jumps off the page for me is the concept of groupthink.
Okay, explain that in this specific context.
Look at the Pharisees. Their whole system was based on reinforcing each other's errors. At one point, they ask, have any of the rulers or the Pharisees believed in him? They looked to their peers for validation rather than looking at the evidence, at the truth. It was a perfect echo chamber.
And the parents too.
The parents were completely controlled by the fear of the group, the fear of being different, the fear of being cast out.
So the application for you, the listener, today is, where are you letting the group define your reality? It could be your political party, your social circle, your company culture. Are you afraid to skip what you know is true because you might get cast out of the synagogue?
Or canceled, or unfriended, or fired. It's the same social pressure.
Exactly. The cost of truth is often social isolation. But the story of the blind man tells us that if you are cast out for the sake of the truth, Jesus finds you. You might trade a superficial, fragile community for a genuine connection with the divine.
That's a trade worth making.
And what about the generational trap? We talked about that idea of the sins of the fathers.
That's a huge one for today. We all have baggage from our families, from our upbringing. We tell ourselves stories. My dad had a temper, so I have a temper. Or I come from a broken home, so I'm doomed to have broken relationships.
We let our history define our destiny.
We do, and Jesus breaks that chain. He looks at this man born into a tragic situation and says, no, this tragedy isn't a life sentence. It's a setup for God's glory. We need to stop defining ourselves by our history and start asking how God wants to reveal his work in our present circumstances.
And finally, let's talk about the danger of certainty. The Pharisees were so sure they were right. They had the Bible verses memorized. They had the traditions. They had the lineage. And they were dead wrong.
It's a profound warning against spiritual pride. The moment you think you have God all figured out, the moment you say, we see, you are in the most danger of going blind.
So we need to maintain the posture of the beggar.
Always. Humble, aware of our need, and ready to be surprised by God. We have to be willing to have our neat theological boxes shattered by a real encounter with him.
That is a powerful place to land. It really makes you think about all of this. I mean, the beggar didn't even ask to be healed, yet he became the star witness for the defense of Jesus.
And the experts, the Pharisees, they spent their entire lives studying the prophecies for the Messiah, and they missed him completely when he stood right in front of them.
It raises that final provocative question for all of us. What certainties or traditions or political affiliations might be blinding you from seeing the work of God right now in your own life?
That's the question to sit with.
I really want to encourage you, the listener, to go back and read John chapter 9 again, but read it like a screenplay. Watch the character development of the blind man. Notice his progression of faith.
It's incredible.
He goes from calling Jesus a man named Jesus to calling him a prophet, to defending him as someone from God, and finally to confessing him as Lord and worshiping him. It is a journey from blindness to true sight.
And it's a journey that is available to anyone who is willing to admit that they might be blind.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. This was a heavy one, but man, it was so good. We'll catch you on the next one.
Keep your eyes open.